I was back in my wife's high school days, and this time, I made a completely different decision. I was determined to be a bystander, to watch her live the beautiful life she deserved. Even if I wasn't a direct part of that beautiful life, I was more than willing to accept it. A crisp, melodic bell rang, piercing every corner of the campus and silencing the brief burst of noise, restoring the usual quiet. That's high school for you. The short breaks are over in a flash. The school hallways grew quiet, the air thick with the kind of silence that comes just before everyone dives into their studies. The hurried footsteps and hushed conversations of the students were smoothed over by an invisible force, merging into a quiet stream of people flowing into their classrooms. I sat in the back corner, my eyes glued to the girl walking through the doorway. I'd been exiled to the back of the room anyway, so nobody was going to pay attention to a slacker like me. Her name was Chloe. I realized I was grinning like a creep again and immediately slapped my left cheek. She wore a pair of delicate glasses, and behind the lenses, her eyes looked a little tired. She had dark circles under her eyes. She must have been burning the midnight oil studying again. In a sea of students wearing the same uniform, she didn't stand out. But this girl, the one who seemed to blend into the crowd, just happened to be the school's star student, the valedictorian of the science track for 3 years running. That was my future wife. No, now that I was back, she would become a rising star at NASA, or a renowned physics professor, someone on par with Stephen Hawking. But the one thing she wouldn't be was my wife. She wouldn't be tied down to a loser like me. As a few more students took their seats, I allowed myself one last, lingering look at her before pulling my eyes away, untying the long-sleeved uniform shirt from around my waist, and properly putting it on. Our homeroom teacher, Mr. Davis, rushed into the classroom holding a stack of papers, a stern look on his face. "All right, class, we're having a pop quiz." Mr. Davis's flat voice shattered the classroom's quiet. The class erupted in groans, but after a moment of complaining, everyone numbly pulled out their pens and paper. My eye twitched, and a wave of dread washed over me. This was the one thing I hated about being back in high school. A quiz every other day and a major test right after. I sighed internally, closed the textbook that was cleaner than my conscience, and tossed it onto the pile of books on the floor to my left. I just bothered to dig that textbook out, and now it was completely useless. Chloe, hearing her name called, Chloe walked up to the front as usual, took the stack of quizzes from Mr. Davis, counted them, and started passing them down the first row. Then she smoothed down her shirt and sat back down, perfectly composed. Her posture was perfect as she tore a sheet of scratch paper from the top of her notebook and placed it under her right hand. Most of the kids in the class looked miserable, but Chloe and I were the only two who looked completely calm. The difference was, I wasn't calm because I was confident. I was calm because I already knew what my score would be. How could anyone expect a guy who'd been out of school for years and was a slacker back then to fill out a test paper? A math test, no less. The soft rustle of paper filled the room as Chloe took the quiz from the student in front of her, who whispered, "Hey genius, let me borrow some of your brain power," making her smile faintly. As she raised her elbow, the sleeve of her uniform slipped down, revealing a sliver of her pale forearm. I didn't realize I was staring at Chloe, completely zoned out, until the rustling of the quizzes reached my desk. I couldn't stop myself from slapping my right cheek. The stinging pain forced me to tear my eyes away from Chloe's back. I glanced up to see how far the quizzes had gotten, and just as they were about to reach my row, I timed it perfectly and stuck 2 fingers out by the shoulder of the kid in front of me. Looking at the old burn scar on my index finger, I instinctively patted my pocket and, sure enough, felt a lighter and a few cigarettes. Man, in my last life, I didn't learn a single thing in school, but I sure picked up a ton of bad habits. The papers rustled as they were passed back. But then, the kid in front of me turned around and said quickly, "They're all out." Then he immediately turned back and buried his head in the quiz. Oh, thank God. There were none left. This was perfect. Only an idiot would want to take this quiz. Before I could even enjoy the moment, I saw Mr. Davis shoot a look my way. When he saw my empty desk, his brow furrowed, making his already sour face look even grimmer. It made me want to go up there and smooth out the wrinkles on his forehead. But then I remembered how in the last life, Mr. Davis made a killing on the stock market and walked around like he owned the place, and the thought vanished. Let him frown. After all, in a few years, he wouldn't have a care in the world to frown about. I quirked my lips into a bright, charming smile, but he just frowned harder, like he'd seen a ghost. My smile fell, and his expression instantly went back to normal, like he was breathing a sigh of relief. What was that all about? In my past life, the worst I did was not study. I never did anything truly out of line. The worst thing I did was steal his prized valedictorian. At that thought, all the air went out of me. I lowered my head, my eyes dropping to the floor. Chloe, in this life, you won't get tangled up with a loser like me. Just as I was wallowing in my own self-pity, an unwelcome sight appeared before my eyes. A bright white quiz paper that made my head ache just looking at it. Following the paper up past a hand with a callus on the middle finger, my gaze met Chloe's, her eyes completely devoid of emotion. You can have this one. I'll go get another. Her high ponytail swept across the nape of her neck as she lowered her head, her eyelashes fluttering like a butterfly's wings. My heart skipped a beat. The hand propping up my head fell to my side, as I finally remembered exactly what moment I had returned to. It was this simple act of kindness, something Chloe would have done for any classmate, that had forged our connection in the last life. In the last life, I took the quiz and just scribbled all over it, the only thing on my mind being Chloe's name. And in the end, she was the one held back by a worthless punk like me. Just as she was about to turn away, I shot to my feet, made a completely different decision than last time, and pushed the quiz back into her hand. My fingers brushed against her palm. Damn, it was soft. Just like I remembered. I scoffed, shoved a hand in my pocket, and avoided Chloe's stunned gaze, instead looking up to challenge Mr. Davis. I don't know any of this anyway. I'm not doing it. I said it with a casual swagger, and the noise made a few of the kids buried in their quizzes look up and sneak glances at me. Being so out of place among these straight-laced, good students actually made me weirdly appealing to them. That's why in my last life, even though my grades were garbage, I somehow managed to catch the eye of a few naive high school girls. What can I say? Innocent girls have always had a thing for bad boys like me. Chloe just stood there, stunned into silence. With those black-framed glasses on, she looked utterly bewildered. Damn, she was so cute it killed me. I swallowed hard, worried this would backfire, then tossed my head and strode towards the door as Mr. Davis started to fume. My grades are bad. That doesn't mean I'm a bad person. I might not be studying, but I wasn't going to disrupt the rest of the class. At the doorway, I gave Mr. Davis a brazen wave goodbye. Man, no wonder Chloe fell for me last time. With this much charm, it's a miracle I'm not a movie star. Mr. Davis just stared as I left. I took a detour past the dean's office for fun, then walked to the school gate with my head down. But before I could even step outside, the security guard stopped me. I looked down and realized I'd forgotten I was still in my school uniform. I argued with him for ages, but nothing I said would convince him to let me leave, and he didn't move that metal detector wand an inch from my chest. I had no choice. I glanced at his nicotine-stained fingers, pulled a cigarette from my pocket, lit it, and slowly held it out to him. Then, as he stared in shock, I quickly let it go, flicking it onto the desk inside the security booth. It traced a perfect arc through the air and instantly lit the newspaper on the desk. Yes, a perfect three-pointer. By the time the guard grabbed his cup of water and easily put out the small fire, all he could see was the dust I'd kicked up. After running for a short distance, I looked back at the school building standing tall among the skyscrapers and gave it a two-fingered salute. A final salute to my youth. All right, Project Moonlight, Step 1, complete. The sky was painted in pale morning colors as shops began to open their doors, and the smell of hot food wafted from the breakfast carts. The smell hit me, and my stomach cramped, reminding me I hadn't eaten breakfast. I turned all my pockets inside out and managed to scrounge up a grand total of $2.50. Damn, my younger self was broke. Whatever, I had more important things to do. The city was all towering skyscrapers now. I hadn't been back in so long that I couldn't even find my old dump of an apartment. It took me a while to navigate through the haze of my memory and find the right street. It was a narrow alley, shaded by old trees whose low branches brushed against the shoulders of people passing by. Yep, this was the rundown apartment complex. I could still see some of my childhood graffiti on the peeling walls. I ran up the stairs, stared at the battered wooden door, took a deep breath, and kicked it hard. With a loud thud, a jolt of pain and numbness shot up my leg. Ow, damn it, that hurts like hell. I clutched my leg, grimacing for a second, then scowled at the damn door. It was falling apart, but the lock was still solid. Damn, I never realized how sturdy this piece of junk was. Luckily, the noise had woken up the drunk inside. I heard shuffling from inside and clenched my jaw. The old bastard opened the door, and his hungover face registered surprise when he saw it was me. He squinted at the sky outside. "What are you doing back here?" He said it with disgust, then grabbed the bottle in his right hand and took another swig. I glanced at the trashed apartment, shoved him aside, and walked straight into my old room. It was messy too, but compared to the living room, it was practically pristine. I lifted the mattress and felt underneath. Just as I expected, empty. So, in the last life, he'd already taken this money to buy booze by this point. I laughed bitterly. As I let go, the thin mattress snapped back into place, sending a puff of dust into the air. You think you can hide money in this house from me, kid? The old bastard was sprawled on the couch, having pushed a pile of clothes onto the floor, and he shook his bottle triumphantly. His flushed face disgusted me. My fingers curled into fists, and I didn't realize I was standing right in front of him until the pain of my nails digging into my palms brought me back. You get the hell. Before the old bastard could finish his sentence, I grabbed his jaw, squeezing so hard his mouth fell open in shock. Before he could spit out another curse, I snatched the bottle from his hand without a second thought. The movement was rough and direct. The liquid inside sloshed and foamed from the sudden movement. I tilted the bottle and mercilessly poured the amber liquid down his throat. The old bastard's eyes bulged as he made muffled, gurgling sounds, trying to struggle but failing. I'd been stronger than him for a long time. The money? Where's the money for the booze? I demanded, loosening my grip so he could gasp for air. You son of a bitch, you dare treat your own father this way. The old bastard flew into a rage and scrambled up, raising his hand to slap me. But the alcohol made him unsteady, and he stumbled and fell to the floor. The sticky liquor on my hand and the pungent smell of cheap booze made my stomach turn. I couldn't be bothered wasting my breath on a useless drunk. I strode over, grabbed him by the hair, and forced the rest of the bottle down his throat. Liquor spilled from the corner of his mouth, dripping down his chin and staining his shirt. Only then did the old bastard seem to realize how much stronger I was, and his survival instinct finally kicked in, overriding the drunken rage. His fingernails left a few scratches on my arm. Looking into his bloodshot eyes, I saw my own reflection, a chilling mix of calm and crazy. I leaned down, forcing him to look at me, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. I'll ask you one more time, where's the money? The old bastard looked at me like he didn't recognize me. When I tightened my grip, he finally snapped out of it and his hand instinctively went inside his shirt. So that's where it was. I let go of his hair, ripped his shirt open, and finally found a few 20s. Just a few crumpled bills. I glanced at the empty bottles scattered on the floor, and a familiar feeling of helplessness washed over me. It was the cry of my 18-year-old self, because the man I became had long grown numb to it all. Even when Chloe and I got married later, I refused to let the old bastard come, even though he had the nerve to ask. Other people didn't get it, but I knew what he was really after. The old jerk just wanted to pocket the gift money. I got up, looked down at the old bastard coughing and clutching his head, and stormed out without looking back. I let him curse at my back as I left. After jogging for a while, the familiar streets started to calm my racing heart, especially when I saw the faint outline of the moon, still visible in the daytime sky. I was staring up at the sky for a long time, and the moment I snapped out of it, a shadow tackled me to the ground. What the hell, security guard? Shouldn't you be back at the school gate? The guard didn't say a word, just kept me in a firm hold. A bad feeling crept over me. I glanced to the side, and, sure enough, there was Mr. Davis, his face grim. And there was someone else with him, a guy who looked vaguely familiar. It wasn't until they dragged me back to the office at school that I remembered who he was. The dean of students. Man, it had been a long time. Ethan, you're just ack. The dean was so furious he just pointed at me, speechless. Hearing that name again after so many years felt strange. My old man always just called me you little bastard. The day he had to register my birth, he was still so drunk the clerk at the office couldn't stand it and just picked a name for me. That's why in the last life, after Chloe and I got serious, I shamelessly asked her to pick a new name for me. She was so well-read and brilliant. The name she came up with after a few days was, of course, perfect. As for Ethan, I'd left that name behind a long time ago. I sat there in front of them, silently enduring the three-way interrogation. As the dean's mouth opened and closed, I started to get drowsy, my eyelids getting heavy. I let out a silent yawn and glanced over at Mr. Davis, whose nostrils were flared in anger, and gave him a little smirk that just made his eyes bulge even wider, like they were about to pop right out of his head. I don't know how much time passed, but seeing that I was completely unfazed, the dean gave up his lecture and took a frustrated sip of water. It felt like the right time. I stood up, smoothed out the piece of paper they'd tossed in front of me, and placed it back on the desk. Dean, I'm dropping out. The moment the words left my mouth, the dean's eyes shot open, and he glared at me, practically steaming. The Teacher of the Year mug in his hand rattled against the saucer. Ethan, his voice shot up an octave. I nodded. Yeah, dropping out requires a parent's signature. You can't just scribble, I quit on a piece of scratch paper and call it a day. I nodded like I understood, and while the dean and Mr. Davis watched in confusion, I picked up a pen and forged my old man's signature with a flourish. Then I pushed the paper towards them. They were both silent for a moment, and then I could hear their breathing get heavier. I don't have a mom, and my father's a drunk who couldn't care less about me. As soon as I said that, their expressions changed. The hard line of the dean's mouth softened. What are you going to do with your life if you don't finish school? I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I've already got a plan. They tried to talk me out of it for a while longer, their tone much gentler than before. But it all went in one ear and out the other. When we reached a stalemate, I was the one to give in, sort of. I snatched the official withdrawal form from the dean's hand. As they looked at me with pity, I suddenly had an idea and licked my lips with a mischievous grin. I dropped to my knees in front of them. Dean, Mr. Davis, please, I'm begging you, just lend me a little money. Please. You could tell they were educated types. They'd clearly never dealt with someone as shameless as me. After some expert groveling, I finally walked out of the school gates with a small wad of cash, grinning from ear to ear. I waved at the guy from the recycling center, signaling for him to wait for me outside. Then, under the suspicious eye of the security guard, I strolled back into the classroom. The pop quiz was long over, and everyone was complaining about the questions. The room went quiet for a second when I walked in. Ethan, where'd you go? Someone asked kindly. I just shrugged, not answering him right away. I went to my desk, took off my uniform jacket, and started bundling up the books from my desk inside it. The ones that wouldn't fit, I sorted through and left the clean, unmarked ones on top of the desk. Ethan, what are you doing? The kid in front of me asked, a worried kindness in his voice. Chloe put down her pen and turned to look over, a questioning look on her face. Under her hand was a fresh practice test. She was always like that, naturally gifted but still the hardest worker. I didn't dare look at her. Instead, I faced the rest of the class and their concerned stares and announced, I'm dropping out. The books on the desk are clean. Anyone who wants them can have them. The classroom erupted in murmurs. Of course, to these good, rule-following students, the idea of dropping out was completely alien. Ignoring the buzz of conversation, I tied the sleeves of my jacket into a knot and slung the makeshift bag of books over my shoulder. Out of the corner of my eye, I could feel Chloe's disapproving stare. I hadn't taken more than a few steps before an idea hit me. I rushed up to the front of the class and said with a grin, you're all good students. Make sure you study hard. Think of me as your cautionary tale. Especially you, Chloe. Keep being that brilliant student with a bright future. In the last life, I'd shamelessly chased her. Even though she liked me, she never made the first move. It wasn't until I followed her to her college town, worked odd jobs, and chased her for another year that we finally made it official. Looking back, I think a big part of why she even stooped to like me was because I was an unpredictable element in the stressful, monotonous routine of senior year. She mistook that youthful curiosity for some kind of budding romance. The valedictorian and the dead last slacker, it was the kind of pairing that got all the naive kids in school talking. When I finished, I turned and saw Mr. Davis looking at me with a heartbroken expression. Man, what can you do? People like him, with such a strong sense of duty, they feel sorry even for the class loser dropping out. I thought for a second, and as I reached the door, I leaned in and whispered to Mr. Davis, from now on, feel free to use me as a cautionary tale. I won't sue you for defamation or anything. Just as Mr. Davis's brow shot up and he reached for a ruler to smack me with, I was already out the door. Carrying my bag of books, I'd barely reached the main gate before the same nimble security guard blocked my path with his metal detector wand. I flashed the withdrawal slip in his face, walked brazenly out the gate, and sold the books to the guy from the recycling center. You're not going to school anymore, son? The security guard asked with concern as I was counting the 28 bucks I'd made. I waved a hand over my shoulder without looking back. Nope, not cut out for it. Then, with another two-fingered salute, I said a real goodbye to that school. This time, I was cutting off my doomed connection with Chloe at the root. Given the path her life was on, there was a very high chance we would never cross paths again, which was for the best. With the small fortune tucked into my waistband, I wandered around the city until I finally found the place where my business empire would begin. I pulled out a few 20s and called out loudly, "Hey boss," officially kicking off step 2 of Project Moonlight. That night, I timed it right and went back to the apartment. Sure enough, the old bastard was out getting drunk somewhere. After taking care of some business inside, I walked out without a second thought and let out a long, heavy sigh. I walked the streets, scouting the perfect location to build my business empire. I wandered around like that until evening fell. I grabbed a cheap bun for dinner and called it a night. What can I say, my younger self was dirt poor. After checking out another spot, I stopped short at a corner, and quickly ducked behind a wall. I didn't come out until I saw Chloe hurrying home, clutching her backpack. I stared at her open backpack and the way her uniform was pulled askew, and a thoughtful expression crossed my face. Chloe was always so careful with her books. I frowned, scooped up a handful of dirt, tucked a broken piece of wood into the back of my pants, and headed down the alley she'd just come out of. I'd barely stepped inside when I saw 3 guys with bleached blonde hair. I could tell just by looking at them that they were even bigger slackers than I was. I saw the pink wallet they'd tossed on the ground and realized instantly that Chloe had just been mugged. Damn it, 3 scumbags. The blondies noticed me, dropped their cigarettes, and whistled when they saw my school uniform. They clearly thought I was another easy target. I pulled out the cigarette I'd forgotten to toss, held it up, and walked over to them with a grin. As they looked at me expectantly, I threw the handful of dirt right in their faces. While they were bent over, cursing and rubbing their eyes, I pulled the piece of wood from my waistband and went to town on them. In my last life, once I was with Chloe, I never got into fights again because I knew she didn't like it. After all these years, my skills were a little rusty. Damn, that took more out of me than I expected. I touched the cut on the corner of my mouth and took off running. I hopped a fence to take a shortcut and accidentally landed on a dog. It chased me for a whole block. But thanks to the dog, I actually managed to get to her building ahead of her and leave her wallet on the path she'd have to take. The second I saw Chloe pick up her wallet, I turned and walked away. Touching the cut on my lip, I looked up at the bright, clear moon and left, feeling satisfied. After some careful planning, I used my startup fund to set up a food cart at a busy 3-way intersection not far from a local middle school. The foot traffic was great, and it was an easy spot to make a quick getaway on my cart if I needed to. I just never expected to run into Mr. Davis there. I handed him a hot dog, extra spicy, as a thank you to one of my original investors. When he hesitated, I just shoved it into his hand and turned to serve my other customers. The customers came in waves. One minute my cart was busy, the next it was completely empty. I glanced over at Mr. Davis, who looked like he was about to say something, and casually popped a hot dog into my mouth. So when you said you were going to be an entrepreneur, this is what you meant? Mr. Davis asked carefully, as if he was afraid of hurting my fragile pride. His lips were bright red from the spicy sauce I'd put on it. I was perfectly fine with it, but Mr. Davis looked at me with this complicated expression, like I was running some kind of illegal operation. Don't let the small cart fool you. I make decent money. I'll be able to pay you back soon, I said, smacking my lips. I was destined to be the king of street food. These hot dogs were amazing. Mr. Davis wiped the sweat from his brow, shook his head like it was nothing, and after a long pause, finally asked what was on his mind. So you're really not going back to school? Nope. What's the point? With my grades, I'd never get a decent job. Better to start my own thing now. I was cleaning the grill, wondering why the cart was so empty. This was usually the busiest time of day. Why was no one coming over? Puzzled, I wiped the grease off my hands and added, besides, and this is the most important part, I can't afford tuition. The money I'd earned washing dishes on the sly, I'd stupidly left it at home, and the old bastard had swiped it. In the last life, I still had that student mindset. Even though I couldn't learn anything, I was desperate to stay in school and stressed about how to do it. This time around, I'd wised up. It was all clear to me now. I rubbed my face and glanced down at my clothes, growing more suspicious as I noticed the students nearby kept sneaking glances in my direction. Why aren't they coming over? As I was wondering, I glanced over at Mr. Davis, who was standing there with his lips pressed into a thin, expressionless line, and I instantly understood the problem. Without asking, I shoved another hot dog into his hand. Ethan, just hold it. If you're not holding one, I won't get any customers. Huh. Mr. Davis didn't get it at first, not until a swarm of students suddenly descended on the cart. Then he realized his intimidating presence had been scaring them away. Yep, students are always scared of their teachers. With the customers finally here, I was a blur of activity, taking money and slinging hot dogs. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Mr. Davis still standing there and asked casually, "How did everyone do on that last quiz?" Huh? Oh, they were fine. Everyone's keeping up. Hearing that I still cared about the class, Mr. Davis looked pleased and held his hot dog up high. I was actually a little touched. I didn't think he'd try to help me drum up business. I tried to sound casual as I asked, "Is Chloe still at the top?" "Of course. It's Chloe. She's always number one, no question about it." Hearing the pride in his voice, I couldn't help but nod. Yes, Chloe was always brilliant. If she hadn't been held back by marrying me and having our kid in the last life, she would have been someone everyone looked up to. The grease on the griddle sizzled and popped, spattering my hands. Looking at the crowd of students, I suddenly remembered it wasn't a weekend. "Mr. Davis, Don't you have class today? Seeing I was swamped, Mr. Davis used his free hand to start helping me take money. Nope. The entire senior class went on a hike today. We're just getting back. I just walk faster than the kids. He added, with a sigh of Gankai. Man, you kids are getting so out of shape. I'm an old man, and I still walk faster than any of them. Hearing that gave me a sudden, bad feeling. I looked up and saw Mr. Davis waving enthusiastically at someone in the distance, the grease from his hot dog dripping down the stick onto his hand. I followed his gaze and saw the long line of students. My eyes found Chloe in the crowd instantly. She was chatting quietly with her friends, a shy smile on her face, looking more relaxed than I'd ever seen her. I didn't snap out of it until an impatient customer called my name. I quickly looked down and got back to work, my hands moving expertly. I kept my head down, wishing I could just disappear into the grill. Hey, everyone, over here, over here. Mr. Davis's booming voice brought the whole crowd over. I gritted my teeth and shot him a look, but he just raised an eyebrow at me smugly. Hey Ethan, it's you. Long time no see. Yeah, class isn't the same without you. Heh. I put on a polite smile. They were just being nice. Without me dragging down the curve, the class average was probably way higher. Mr. Davis clapped me on the shoulder and announced with a grand wave of his hand. Hot dogs are on me today for the whole class. Take as many as you want. Just let Ethan know. Wow. Thanks, Mr. Davis. Yeah, thanks, Ethan. Someone from the crowd shouted, and suddenly a chorus of thanks was directed at me. Anyone listening would have thought I was donating a fortune. I snuck a glance at Chloe. She was looking around, curious. I quickly looked away and flashed a big grin at all the fresh-faced kids. No, we're all classmates. I can't let you pay. They're on the house. Eat as many as you want. Wow, you're awesome. Yeah, man, that's so cool of you. Mr. Davis, next to me, tried to say something, but I quickly shoved the hot dog from his hand into his mouth. The kids were all excited but shy. The ones who had money insisted on paying, no matter what I said. The ones without cash were hungry but too embarrassed to take them for free, so I finally had to just close up my money box and hand them out to everyone. If someone was still too shy, I just shoved a hot dog right into their hand. Simple and effective. To be honest, even though I was a terrible student, I've always liked kids. They're simple, you know? No hidden agendas. For a while, even with Mr. Davis helping out, I was completely swamped. I saw a perfectly grilled, golden brown hot dog on the very end, carefully picked it up, brushed it with ketchup, and sprinkled just a tiny bit of chili powder on the tip. Chloe, this one's for you. Saying her name out loud made my chest feel hot. Chloe looked pleasantly surprised, a smile in her eyes as she took the hot dog from me. She couldn't handle much spice, but she always craved just a little bit of it. In the last life, whenever we went out to eat, I'd always order one spicy dish for me and one mild one for her. Wow, Chloe, yours is grilled perfectly. Is it? Chloe took a bite, and the little bit of chili powder made her eyes crinkle as she instinctively stuck out her tongue. I pretended to be surprised. Oh wow, Chloe, you got the lucky one. Thank you. Her whole face seemed to light up like a blossoming flower, her eyes sparkling behind her glasses. In the last life, I loved to tease her. When she was exhausted from studying, I'd gently take off her glasses and kiss her eyelids. I loved seeing that dazed look in her eyes before I pulled her into a hug. Chloe looked happy, but when her eyes met mine, she quickly looked away, as if she'd touched something hot. A faint blush crept up the back of her neck. I glanced down and remembered I was just wearing a white tank top, with my long-sleeved shirt tied around my waist. My chest muscles were kind of showing, and some grease stains made the fabric stick to my skin. Hey, it's a competitive business. If I didn't dress this way, I wouldn't be doing better than the other vendors. Study hard, Chloe. When I said that, she looked up and gave me a small, polite smile that was still a little distant. After that, I kept my head down, focusing on my work. I didn't dare look up again until Mr. Davis checked the time and led the class away. I let my eyes linger on her retreating figure. Her ponytail was tied high, swinging with a confidence that radiated from her every step. There was no trace of the woman who had suffered from postpartum depression. In the last life, with my lack of a diploma, I couldn't find a decent job, so I started my food cart business in Chloe's college town. The story of the valedictorian and the class loser getting together sounds romantic in theory, but nobody thought it would last, and even I was constantly insecure, because Chloe was just so brilliant. She'd come help me at my cart after her classes, and if we ran into anyone from her university, she'd proudly take my arm. She'd introduce me as her boyfriend with total confidence. Even though they never said it, I could feel what they were thinking. She was way too good for me. Chloe never cared, but I didn't want her to struggle. I worked multiple jobs a day, saving every penny. Chloe was very perceptive. She noticed something was off with me and asked her family for a loan. I don't know what she told her family to get them to agree, but seeing the redness in her eyes, I gritted my teeth and swore I wouldn't let her suffer because of me. With the money I'd saved from working part-time, plus the loan from Chloe's family, I bought out a defunct factory. I planned to start my own vertically integrated hot dog business. During those years, Chloe always felt bad that I was working so hard, but I never saw it that way. To me, it felt like we were building a future. It was the future I saw for me and Chloe. I never expected that all that hard work would actually pay off, and I'd make something of myself. Later, her tuition for grad school and all the upfront costs for her research projects came out of our joint account. Life was good. We got married while she was in grad school. I put the house deeds in her and her parents' names. I only had my deadbeat dad, and there was no way I was letting him get his hands on any of it. But right when Chloe was about to start her PhD program, she found out she was pregnant. It was the result of our love, and after talking it over with me, Chloe decided to have the baby. While she was at home on bed rest, her PhD was put on hold, and then the factory ran into trouble because of some online scandal about hot dog ingredients. Sales plummeted. I was working like a madman during that period. Chloe often felt guilty that she couldn't help, and I'd catch her crying in secret. Then, after Chloe gave birth to our daughter, she developed postpartum depression. That's when I truly understood how terrifying mental illness could be. I kicked myself 1,000 times for not noticing it sooner, for failing her as her husband. Even then, Chloe was still so thoughtful, always putting on a smile so I wouldn't worry. But I could tell it was a forced smile. The stress from the factory, having to stop her research, the overwhelming feeling of being a new mom, it all piled up and forced her into the role of a stay-at-home mom. Chloe, such a brilliant person, trapped in a house. She was like a vibrant rose, slowly wilting. I thought about it a lot later. The moon is meant to hang high in the sky, shining brightly. Someone as brilliant as Chloe shouldn't be tied down by a family, shouldn't be shackled by the title of wife. She should be Chloe. Just Chloe. Not my wife, not the mother of my child. You can yearn for the moon all you want, but you can never bring it down from the sky. Chloe should never have been dragged down by someone like me in the first place. The students slowly disappeared into the distance, and I stood there, watching their youthful figures fade. Hey boss, one hot dog. A customer handed me 3 $1 bills. I took them with a smile and asked what toppings he wanted. I stayed busy like that until nightfall. Just as I was about to pack up for the night, I saw the old bastard storming towards me, taking a swig from a bottle as he came, probably trying to work up some liquid courage. I raised an eyebrow in surprise. I never thought that old drunk could find his way here, and I was even more surprised he'd shown up so late. You son of a bitch, you sold everything in the apartment. You think you can get away with that? He put his hands on my card, getting ready to flip my prized possession. That's hilarious. Did he really think I wouldn't lay a hand on him just because we were in public? What a joke. In my last life, my biggest regret was not dealing with him sooner. I grabbed his wrist and twisted it hard. The old bastard yelped in pain, and I easily dragged him aside. I didn't sell everything. Some of it I'm still using. Besides, I bought some of that stuff with my own money. The old bastard couldn't break free. His eyes darted around, and I knew he was about to pull something. Sure enough, the next second he collapsed on the ground and started making a scene. Help! Help me! My ungrateful son is beating his own father. Everyone, come look. A son is beating his father. He flailed his arms and kicked his feet on the ground like a child. Dust billowed up around him, coating his wrinkled, smelly clothes. A crowd started to gather, some looking shocked, some sympathetic, some just indifferent. But no one dared to step in. I just stood there quietly, watching the absurd performance. In the last life, when the factory was in trouble, the old bastard had shamelessly tracked down Chloe and made a scene in public, grabbing at her and demanding money. He wanted to squeeze some booze money out of us before the business went under. Chloe knew he was a scumbag from what I told her, but she never knew he could be this vile. I can still remember the helpless look on Chloe's face. Her depression had just started to get better, and she'd taken our baby out, only to be surrounded by strangers pointing and whispering. Before she married me, Chloe had only ever been praised and admired. She'd never been stared at like she was some kind of sideshow freak. The sound of the old bastard's shouting filled my ears, his shameless face blurring with the memory from the last life. A flicker of irritation broke through my numbness. I grabbed him by the collar and hauled him to his feet. My eyes felt bloodshot as I warned him, "Go on, keep making a scene. The bigger, the better. Let everyone know what a deadbeat drunk you are, that you never spent a day raising me." I roared, letting out all the pain this biological father had caused me across 2 lifetimes. He pissed away all the money my mother left. The only reason I survived was because of the kindness of strangers. You never raised me, so don't expect me to take care of you. If you ever show your face to me again, I'll go to the cops. Don't forget how much money you've stolen from me over the years." My words seemed to scare him, and the crowd started pointing and whispering. The moment I let go, he collapsed back onto the ground. Just as I turned to leave, I heard the sound of shattering glass and someone in the crowd shouting a warning. The old bastard lunged at me with the broken bottle, but I just stood there, watching his crazed eyes. A deep sense of weariness washed over me. This is so exhausting. A life like this is meaningless. Maybe it would be better if I just died. Then Chloe's life and mine would truly be on separate paths. As the crowd gasped and screamed, I suddenly saw a vision of Chloe from our last life. It was after I'd told her about my gutter rat existence. She had just cupped my face in her hands, forcing me to meet her eyes. She had looked at me so seriously and told me, word for word, "Don't let anyone else define your life. You have to live it your own way. Even if you feel like mud, you can still build a wall." She had kissed my forehead and whispered, "My love, you are not a loser." My body moved before my brain could think. I took a half step back, as if the memory of Chloe was pulling me out of the way. The jagged edge of the bottle only cut into my right arm. The sight of warm, red blood seemed to sober the old bastard up instantly. His hand trembled as he let go of the bottle, his eyes wide with fear. I couldn't help but scoff. A lowlife that even his own family avoided was actually afraid of me. What was he afraid of? That I'd send him to jail? I clutched my bleeding arm, looking down at him without any expression, as if I couldn't feel the pain at all. My lips were pale as I gave him my final warning. "I'm only going to say this once. Stay out of my life. If I ever see you again, I'll add this assault to the list, and make sure you spend the rest of your days in a cell." The old bastard swallowed hard. The stench of spilled booze on the ground made me sick. "Get out of here. Can't you see they're calling the cops?" My friendly reminder sent the old bastard scrambling to his feet and running off without a backward glance. I picked up the pieces of broken glass, threw them in a trash can, and then got on my cart and rode away. The old bastard was a real idiot. I was bluffing. None of these people were our relatives or neighbors. They weren't going to call the cops. It was a family dispute. I went to an urgent care clinic to get my arm stitched up. The smell of disinfectant always made me uneasy. In the last life, when Chloe had postpartum depression, she refused to admit she was sick, so I was the one who had to keep going to the doctor's office. Eventually, after shamelessly pestering her, I even got the doctor's number so I could text her on iMessage. She told me that even with a supportive family, new mothers are still incredibly vulnerable to postpartum depression. Childbirth takes a huge physical and mental toll, and then you have to care for a newborn, which leaves a new mother in a very fragile state. Even with a family's best efforts, it might not be enough to meet all of her emotional and psychological needs. If a new mother doesn't have enough social and emotional support, she can feel isolated, helpless, and depressed. Every time I thought about it, I wanted to slap myself. "This is how you act like a husband? You bastard." But Chloe, even when she was sick, would always comfort me, telling me she appreciated how hard I was working, running between the factory and home. My wife, my love. Damn, she was just too good. I left the clinic in a hurry and finally got back to my new home, a tent under a bridge overpass. But when I saw dog crap inside my makeshift tent, I crawled out and started cursing at the empty air. Unbelievable. I called this place my kennel as a joke, but I never thought a dog would actually take a dump in it. Cursing under my breath, I cleaned up the mess, then lay down on my sleeping bag and stared at the moon through a small hole I'd cut in the top of the tent. "Oh moon, my moon, please watch over my love. Let her have a safe and happy life this time." In the days that followed, I only saw Chloe once, when I went to pay back the dean and Mr. Davis. After that, I never saw her again. Later, after the SATs were over, Chloe came by my cart once to buy a hot dog. It scared me so much that I moved my cart to a new spot the very next day. I didn't see her again before she left for college out of state. It was for the best. Chloe's brilliant life was just beginning. The days ticked by. It had been 2 years, 3 months, and 5 days since I'd last seen Chloe. Man, honestly, I didn't want to keep count, but for some reason, my brain just has a knack for it, and the number pops into my head automatically. I thought maybe I'd unlocked some hidden talent, but then I borrowed a middle school textbook to check. Nope, still made my head spin. I definitely wasn't cut out for school. "Hey boss, one hot dog." That familiar voice again. I expertly loaded it with extra spice, took his money with one hand, and passed him the hot dog with the other. Watching Mr. Davis panting from the heat, I laughed at him as I twisted open a bottle of water. "Mr. Davis, how do you do it?" No matter where I move my cart, You always manage to find me. For the past few years, I'd moved my car to a new spot every holiday season to avoid any chance of running into Chloe, but without fail, Mr. Davis would always track me down. Mr. Davis shot me a smug look and patted his burgeoning beer belly contentedly. It's a gift. I chuckled, looking at his thinning hair. You're getting older, you know. You should probably lay off the greasy, salty food. Don't want your blood pressure to skyrocket. But he just waved it off, so all I could do was shrug. After serving another customer, I pulled a small, red velvet box from my jacket. Mr. Davis's eyes widened in surprise. For me? Yeah. Teacher Appreciation Day was a little while ago, right? I figured a slacker like me showing up would just embarrass you. So I'm making up for it with a gift. Oh, you kid. You don't have to say things like that. Mr. Davis tossed the hot dog stick, wiped his hands on his pants, and took the box from me. A fountain pen. I love it. Mr. Davis was beaming, so happy that even the few hairs left on his head seemed to be dancing. I couldn't figure out why such a small gift made him so ecstatic. What? Did your other students show up empty-handed? Of course not. But it's the thought that counts. I casually wiped down the grill, trying to subtly steer the conversation toward Chloe. The moment I mentioned Chloe, his star student, Mr. Davis lit up again. Chloe, I hear she's doing great in college. Of course she is. That girl is brilliant, top of her class and everything. Huh, of course she is. Mr. Davis held the pen, examining it from every angle, finally squinting at the brand name engraved on it. He mumbled the syllables a few times, but couldn't quite pronounce it. I didn't get why a math teacher was wrestling with a French word. Then I saw Mr. Davis suddenly turn away from me, acting all secretive. He wasn't getting emotional, was he? I was about to say something to comfort him, but he suddenly spun back around like he'd been zapped, holding the box like it was on fire. This pen is how much? Are you crazy? Take it back, right now. Mr. Davis was holding his phone, the screen still open to the online store page. He frantically tried to put the pen back in its box, but his hands were shaking too much to get it aligned. Just keep it. You know I'm not just running this little cart anymore. With the experience from my last life, I expanded beyond just the hot dog cart. I was way ahead of the market trends. I saved up enough money early on to buy that factory. I was back on the same path to success as last time. The only reason I still run the cart is because I genuinely love it. Besides, Mr. Davis has been my most loyal customer for years. His wallet must have taken a serious hit. After a lot of convincing, Mr. Davis finally relented and tucked the pen into his pocket. Thank you, Ethan. I sighed and corrected him again. I've told you 100 times, call me Ansel. Don't use that old name anymore. Mr. Davis rubbed the pen in his pocket, pursed his lips, and teased me. Ooh, Ansel, Ansel. Hearing his sing-song, sarcastic tone, I couldn't help but roll my eyes. Mr. Davis sat on the planter behind my cart, and we continued to chat idly. What made you pick such a fancy name? I never took you for the literary type. It's a good name, right? Chloe picked it for me in the last life. Ansel. Damn, it sounds so sophisticated. Mr. Davis nodded, then paused for a second and shook his head. It just sounds a bit, I don't know, a little odd. I couldn't help but turn and give him a surprised look. The look I gave him seemed to unnerve him. How did he know? In the last life, I begged Chloe to give me a better name. She thought about it for a few days and gave me a few options. Ansel was actually one she came up with as a joke. Because I always took care of everything and never let her worry, she used to pat my head and quote some old poem about how the moon doesn't understand human sorrow. But I did. I knew all my moon's troubles. I fell in love with the name instantly. Maybe it's one of those things only well-read people get. I glanced at the sky and decided to pack it in for the day. I sauced up the last few hot dogs, bagged them, and handed them to Mr. Davis. These are for your wife. Before Mr. Davis could even reach for his wallet, I was on my cart and speeding away. I stopped my cart by the bridge and pulled out a new bag of dog food. I'd moved out from under the overpass a long time ago, but I'd left some old blankets and sheets there and turned the spot into a shelter for stray dogs. I was about to give a whistle to call the dogs over, but before I got close, I saw someone standing there, the person I thought about day and night. Oh my God, what was Chloe doing there? I quickly ducked behind a tree. Just like in the last life, she'd taken off her glasses and straightened her hair. She was so beautiful, she was practically glowing. Chloe, don't worry. Your dad's going to be okay. That's when I noticed another girl next to her, squatting down with her and petting one of the dogs. Oh hey, I knew her. It was her best friend. I remembered she was a writer. I hadn't even seen her there. Chloe's head was bowed, and a shadow of sadness clouded her eyes. The slight furrow in her brow was enough to break my heart. I racked my brain, trying to remember what had happened to my dear father-in-law around this time in the last life. In the last life, Chloe had suddenly taken a leave of absence from school, leaving in a hurry without any time to explain. The factory was just getting started back then, and she made me promise to stay and look after it, forbidding me from going with her. I had no choice. I just transferred all the money I had in my account to her. Later, when I pressed her for details, she told me her father had broken his leg in a fall. Chloe's parents were regular working-class people. They both worked at a plant, and her dad had to do a lot of climbing, which is how the accident happened. I frowned, my fingers digging into the bark of the tree. Chloe shook her head, petted the dog one last time, sighed, and then left with her friend. Her shoulders were slumped. I waited a few minutes until I was sure they were long gone before I came out of hiding. Seeing a familiar face, the pack of dogs immediately swarmed me. I absent-mindedly poured food into their bowls and stroked the head of the little dog Chloe had been petting. I could almost still feel the warmth from her hand. In the last life, even with his broken leg and the high medical bills, my dear father-in-law refused to use the money I'd sent Chloe. He was afraid that if they used my money, it would make his daughter feel like she owed me something. Man, my love was the best, and her parents were just as great. In the end, I had to call him secretly, behind Chloe's back, and tell him I was just paying back the money. The money Chloe had borrowed from them years ago. I even forged an IOU, with interest. After I gave him all sorts of assurances, he finally, stiffly, agreed. But not before warning me never to mistreat his daughter, or he'd break my legs. My in-laws were proud, honest people. They'd rather sell their house than ask anyone for help. Thinking about it now gave me a headache. My dear father-in-law, I really did love that man. Then an idea hit me. I made a quick call to the factory, gave some instructions, then hopped on my cart and rode to the supermarket. I picked out a few expensive but discreet gifts and went straight to Mr. Davis's house. Then, in a practiced move, I dropped to my knees, gifts in both hands, and hugged the legs of Mr. Davis and his wife. I even remembered to politely greet his son and daughter-in-law. I don't have many virtues, but being shameless is one of them. Otherwise, I never would have won Chloe over in the last life. After I explained my request, the tense look on Mr. Davis's face vanished. He just rolled his eyes at me, completely exasperated. Ethan, you could have just asked. You scared the hell out of me. The way you were acting, I thought you were asking me to help you commit a crime or something. Heh, alright, this was going to work. My dear father-in-law, your son-in-law, no, your son-in-law from a past life, is here to save the day. I left the gifts and a box of fresh products from my factory at Mr. Davis's house. As I was leaving, I looked at his little grandson and said kindly, "Hey kid, make sure you study hard, or you'll end up like me." Before I could finish the sentence, Mr. Davis kicked me out the door. The security door slammed shut behind me without a hint of mercy. I stared at the welcome mat on his porch and marveled again at Mr. Davis's kindness. He wouldn't even let me be a free cautionary tale. I told him I wouldn't even charge him royalties. Oh well, I was still a little worried about Chloe though. She was so strong-willed and always tried to handle everything herself. These past few days must have been tough on her. I used my non-college educated brain to come up with a plan, then slapped my thigh and went to stake out the house of her best friend, who I knew was home from college on break. Man, I knew from the last life that her friend was a homebody, but I never realized she was this much of a hermit. After waiting all day, I finally saw her come downstairs. I immediately zipped up my jacket, burying half my face in the collar, and pretended to be looking at my phone. Wow, the amusement park is giving away free balloons and free Ferris wheel rides. This has to be a once-in-a-lifetime event. When her friend didn't seem to react, I ducked into a nearby stairwell, took off my jacket, and put it on inside out. Good thing I was smart enough to wear a reversible jacket. I jogged past her friend again, pretending to be a different person. Oh my god, the amusement park has free balloons and free Ferris wheel rides. Wow, this must be a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Then I ditched the jacket entirely and walked past her friend a third time. Oh my god, free balloons and a free Ferris wheel at the amusement park. A once-in-a-lifetime deal. I have to go with my best friend. Just as I was debating whether I should do another pass, this time shirtless, I finally heard her make a phone call to Chloe. "Chloe, let's go to the amusement park. The Ferris wheel is free today." Chloe must have said no, because her friend immediately started begging in a whiny voice. "Please, Chloe, just come with me, please." I saw her break into a happy smile and immediately turned and left. Yes, mission accomplished. Before I could even celebrate, a gust of wind hit me and I sneezed. Damn it, who was talking about me? I sniffled and put my jacket back on. Knowing Chloe's routine, her makeup usually took about 35 minutes, so I had plenty of time to make my way over to the amusement park. I had just gotten on my cart when I saw her friend come back downstairs, already changed into a new outfit. Oh my God. My eyes widened as I watched her hop on a rental bike and take off. Oh no, I'd miscalculated. Chloe must have been so upset, she didn't even bother with makeup. My heart ached for her. I rolled up my sleeves and started pedaling my cart like a madman. I only breathed a sigh of relief when I saw her friend stop in front of Chloe's building. But I didn't slow down. My trusty cart, my partner in business, got me there a good 10 minutes before they did. I stood in the middle of the park, dressed in a mascot costume, and spotted Chloe immediately. She looked a little thinner, her hair simply pulled back, and the dark circles under her eyes were more pronounced. I rushed forward and handed Chloe the sunflower-shaped balloon I'd been clutching in my left hand. I remembered to hand one to her friend too. Chloe looked surprised and delighted. Her eyes lit up, and a small smile played on her lips, finally erasing the sad expression she'd been wearing. "Thank you," she said politely as she took the balloon and walked past me. Her friend excitedly shook her arm. "See, Chloe? I told you there were free balloons. Come on, the Ferris wheel is free too." I pretended to hand out more balloons, following them from a short distance, and overheard her friend trying to cheer her up. "Chloe, don't be so down. Your dad's medical bills are covered now, right? It's like a miracle. Who knew those sausages your old teacher Mr. Davis brought over would have a grand prize winner? I know, but it just feels so unreal. What's there to be scared of? You got the money, and the money is real." Chloe smiled faintly and tied the sunflower balloon to her wrist. "I guess you're right. It really does feel like someone is watching over me." By the time they finished their conversation, I had given out all my balloons, and a wave of relief washed over me. Mr. Davis really came through. I'm a genius for coming up with such a brilliant, roundabout plan. My moment of self-congratulation was short-lived. Chloe and her friend were already at the Ferris wheel. While they were waiting in line, I stood behind them and gave the operator a frantic, meaningful look. When it was their turn, the operator, who I'd already paid off, walked over with a huge grin. "Wow, ladies, you are incredibly lucky. You're our 100th customers of the afternoon, which means your ride on the Ferris wheel is free," the operator said, handing 2 flowers to Chloe. The sun broke through the clouds, casting dappled golden light everywhere. She lowered her head and gently smelled the beautiful flower, her movements delicate, as if afraid to spoil the unexpected gift. Chloe closed her eyes, a look of pure, peaceful contentment on her face. In the last life, I used to buy her a flower every single day from my cart and tuck it behind her ear. The lady at the flower stand got to know me so well that she gave me a discount on our wedding flowers. I picked them out myself. I knew Chloe would love them. Chloe got on the Ferris wheel with her friend, a smile in her eyes as she looked down and scanned the park below. When I felt her gaze pass over me, I quickly raised my hands above my head and made a big heart shape. I thought I saw her tap her friend's arm, pointing me out. The Ferris wheel began to turn, and I just stood there, head tilted back, watching it go around and around. In the last life, it was on a Ferris wheel that Chloe and I finally admitted our feelings for each other. "Oh, Ferris wheel, please take away my love's sadness." The Ferris wheel slowed to a stop. Chloe and her friend got off, arm in arm, the loose strands of her hair blowing gently in the breeze, mingling with the scent of flowers in the air. As they passed me, I heard her friend say, "Chloe, you're so lucky today." "Yeah, I think so too." Chloe went on a bunch of other rides, and I stood at a distance the whole time, just watching them have fun and take pictures. The sun began to set, the harsh yellow light softening into a gentle glow tinged with orange and violet at the edges. It made the hem of Chloe's dress seem to change colors as she moved. Luckily, Chloe was smiling the entire time, which meant I couldn't wipe the grin off my own face. When they were tired and getting ready to leave, I pulled out a Polaroid camera and held up a cardboard sign that read, "Free photos." "Oh, it's you. You're still here." Chloe smiled at me, pointed up at the Ferris wheel, and made a heart shape with her hands, just like I had. "That's right. I'm always here." I nodded and raised the Polaroid to take their picture. Chloe held the flower up to her cheek. The sunlight streamed through the petals, casting a soft glow on her face that made her look even more beautiful. Looking at her through the viewfinder, my heart skipped a beat as I pressed the button. The photo developed quickly. Chloe looked just as beautiful in it. Postpartum depression is a real monster. In the last life, when Chloe was sick, she would get fixated on some small thing and just scream until she was hoarse. Then, when she calmed down, she would cover her face and cry, apologizing to me over and over. She smashed every mirror in the house back then because she couldn't stand to look at her own reflection. Her body had changed, she looked exhausted, and she was filled with this unexplainable resentment every single day. "Thank you." Chloe smiled at me, took the photo, and then huddled with her friend, whispering about it. I turned away, let out a long sigh as I watched her walk away, and then dragged my aching feet to the employee break room. I took off the heavy mascot costume and collapsed on the floor. I sniffled. I felt a cold coming on. My head felt fuzzy, and I thought I heard Chloe calling my name. I groggily opened my eyes. When I saw Chloe peeking her head through the doorway, I jumped to my feet. I was fumbling to put the mascot head back on when Chloe walked over, a look of happy surprise on her face. "Ethan, long time no see." When she saw the costume in my hands, her eyes lit up even more. "So it was you in the costume. I knew there was something familiar about you." I immediately shook my head, about to deny it, but then the park manager poked his head in through a window. "Put the costume back where you found it when you're done." I'm just working here part-time." I looked into her smiling eyes, my mind completely blank. All I could do was give her a slight nod. I put the costume away and, ignoring Chloe's attempt to talk to me more, I quickly walked away. I accidentally bumped into her friend's shoulder on my way out. "Sorry." I apologized quickly and squeezed past her, hurrying to get away. I didn't stop walking until I was far away. Then I finally let myself squat down by a wall and wipe away the tears that had started to fall. I sniffled, sneezed, and then headed for home. I didn't know how long Chloe was in town for, but I did my best to avoid her. I didn't even go out with my cart for a long time. It got to the point where Mr. Davis called me for several days straight, asking if I was dead. Seriously, couldn't he at least hope for the best for me? It wasn't until I snuck over to the hospital and saw my dear father-in-law being discharged that I finally relaxed. I didn't see Chloe there, so I felt it was safe to start working my cart again. The next few years were quiet. It was hard to get any information about Chloe out of Mr. Davis. It wasn't his fault. He genuinely didn't know anything. My factory was still doing great. I worked my cart on a regular schedule, closing up on time every day to go feed the dogs under the overpass. And every night, I'd stare up at the moon and smile like an idiot for a while. Life wasn't so bad. And just like that, another 2 years went by, and Chloe graduated with her bachelor's degree. She was Chloe, after all. Brilliant. Especially this time, without me to mess things up. Just like in the last life, she got accepted into the graduate program at her university. Mr. Davis, coming all the way out here in the dead of winter. You're going to make me cry. I rubbed my frozen hands together and handed an extra spicy hot dog to Mr. Davis, who was bundled up in his parka like a marshmallow. I watched him struggle to pull off his gloves to pay with his phone. "Of course, I'm your most loyal customer. How come you never give me one for free?" "Wow, Mr. Davis, you're not short on cash. That stock portfolio of yours is probably making money hand over fist." Hearing my praise, he puffed out his chest proudly, took a bite of the hot dog, and immediately started sweating from the spice. He finished half the hot dog, and when I still hadn't said anything, he cleared his throat and broke the silence. "So, no questions about Chloe today?" My eyes shot wide open. I saw his "I told you so" expression and glanced around nervously. I pulled him closer and whispered, "How did you know?" "Oh, how did I know?" Mr. Davis scoffed and rolled his eyes. "For years, every single conversation we've had, you found a way to bring up Chloe. Only an idiot wouldn't have figured it out by now," he said, rolling his eyes at me again. In this cold, I was half afraid his eyes would freeze like that. "You think a slacker like you could ever pull one over on me? In your dreams." He tossed the stick in the trash and tried to give me some advice. "Chloe's still single, you know. If you like her, you should go for it." I shook my head and stared at the grill, lost in thought, not saying anything for a long time. When I finally snapped out of it, I looked up and he was gone. He didn't even say goodbye. Was he still mad about what I said? Maybe you have to be petty to get rich. I watched the snowflakes start to fall, coming down faster and thicker until the whole world was covered in a layer of white. Icicles started to form on the awning of my cart. I broke one off and rolled it between my fingers. In the last life, I loved to make a snowball and then press my cold hands against Chloe's cheeks. When she'd pretend to be mad, I'd pull her inside my big winter coat to warm her up. My fingertips were numb and red, and the icicle had melted completely. I reached up to pull down the awning, and just as I was about to close it, I saw a familiar face standing in front of me. Long time no see. Chloe was standing in the snow. She tilted her head and smiled at me, adjusting her scarf and revealing her rosy cheeks. In just a few seconds, a dusting of snow had already settled on her hair. "Chloe, you." I was still trying to process why she was here, but seeing the snow collecting in her hair, I reacted without thinking, moving the small awning from my cart to hold it over her head. Chloe looked up at me, her eyes curving into a smile. She was wearing makeup. She was still so beautiful. I could feel my face getting hot. Damn it, it was freezing out here. "Why are you out without an umbrella?" I almost said more, but I caught myself just in time and swallowed the words. Chloe glanced at my snow-dusted grill, then looked up at me, the snowflakes on her eyelashes melting. She took a step closer, and I felt my heart pound in my chest. I came to thank you. Huh? For what? I was completely lost. Chloe took off her scarf and draped it over her arm, revealing the pale skin of her neck. I came to thank the person who got my wallet back for me. To thank the person who went to so much trouble to help with my dad's medical bills. To thank the person in the mascot costume who tried to cheer me up, and the person who gave me the flowers. She said it all in a rush, and with every word, my heart hammered against my ribs. I couldn't meet her eyes. I quickly looked away, staring at nothing in particular. Chloe tilted her head, and my eyes were drawn back to her. Is that right? You must have me confused with someone else, Chloe. Before I could finish, her best friend appeared out of nowhere, holding 2 umbrellas and looking like she was about to solve a mystery. She gave me a smug grin and pulled out her phone. Want to see the security footage from that alley? How about a sworn statement from the owner of the amusement park? Or maybe a Wikipedia entry? With that, she dragged a sheepish-looking Mr. Davis out from behind a corner. Need a witness? My head was spinning. I looked at Mr. Davis, who was avoiding my eyes, and I was completely speechless. I just happened to be working there. You're reading too much into it, Chloe. Reading too much into it? Right. Her friend and Mr. Davis both pursed their lips, giving me a look that said, yeah, right. Chloe laughed at their antics, then looked me straight in the eye and said, enunciating each word, thank you. My mouth opened and closed a few times before I managed to stammer out. I have to go home now. Don't read too much into it, Chloe. I left the awning standing there and tried to make a run for it, but Chloe grabbed my arm. Unbelievable. I was so pathetic. The moment she touched my hand, my entire body went weak. Damn it. Her hand was still so soft. Chloe tugged a few times, but couldn't get me to move. She raised an eyebrow and stepped in front of me. Oh, she pouted, looking a little disappointed. I tried to pull my hand away, but for some reason, my arm wouldn't obey. Chloe suddenly looked up, rising onto her tiptoes, her eyes sparkling. Do you want to try going out with me? Her words were so direct, they took my breath away. I wanted to say no, but my head felt too heavy to shake. I think my cold was getting worse. Before I could answer, her expression fell. Experience from the last life told me she was faking it, pretending to be hurt. Usually, at this point, I would pinch her cheeks and give in with a smile. But that was the last life. Looking at her now, I wanted to call her out on it, but my throat felt tight, and no words would come out. Chloe put her hands together in a pleading gesture, her beautifully made-up face moving closer to mine. Please, don't say no. We can just start by getting to know each other. Before I could respond, she stuck out her hand. Hi, I'm Chloe. I felt my hand, hanging at my side, start to tremble. Finally, Mr. Davis couldn't take it anymore. He walked over, took my hand, and placed it in Chloe's. As she looked at me with hopeful eyes, I felt a lump in my throat as I finally spoke. I'm Ansel. Ansel. That's a beautiful name. Yeah, my love chose it for me. Damn, I'm so pathetic. The moment Chloe got close, my mind went completely blank, especially when she smiled at me. Damn it, it was a honey trap. And damn it, it worked. I avoided her for a long time after that. Finally, Mr. Davis couldn't take it anymore and smacked me on the back of the head. What are you so worried about, kid? Man, what was I worried about? That a slacker like me wasn't good enough for her. That I'd hold her back from her academic dreams. That Chloe would get postpartum depression again. After I finished my rambling list of worries, Mr. Davis smacked me on the head again. It made me see stars. You'd have those worries with anyone. Are you going to hurt her if you're with her? No. I looked up and saw Chloe walking slowly towards me, and it felt like something clicked into place in my brain. I pushed Mr. Davis aside and ran to Chloe, desperate for an answer. Chloe, do you want to get married? Chloe's face instantly flushed, and she looked so beautiful it hurt. She stammered, I guess so. I immediately got agitated. But what if he doesn't treat you right? What if he hurts you? What if you get pregnant and you're unhappy? Chloe's eyes shifted, and she snuck a glance at Mr. Davis, who was giving her a look. Then she nodded with a worried expression. You're right, what would I do? Yeah, what would she do? I wrung my hands in agitation. The thought of anyone hurting Chloe made me see red. Chloe's eyes twinkled mischievously. She took my hand and said in a tempting voice, Would you ever treat me like that? Never. I answered without a moment's hesitation, and suddenly, everything became clear. Looking at my own reflection in her eyes, I pleaded with all my heart. Chloe, if you ever decide to get married, and you want someone who will treat you right, would you please consider me? Then I immediately raised my hand to swear an oath. The house will be in your name. I won't get in the way of your PhD. We'll only think about kids when you're settled and ready. I swear I'll always be by your side, and I'll never let you suffer from postpartum depression." Before I could finish, Chloe, her face bright red, put her hand over my mouth. "What are you talking about? You're already thinking about marriage and kids." She pouted shyly and leaned in to whisper in my ear, "If you want to get married, you'll have to start by being my boyfriend." I stared at the smile playing on her lips, my heart racing, and I finally heard Mr. Davis let out a long sigh of relief behind me. "Hey, why are you crying?" I didn't even realize I was crying until Chloe's hand touched my cheek. I reached out and pulled the woman I'd dreamed of day and night into a fierce hug. After that, things went pretty much like they did in the last life, only a lot smoother this time. After my practically on-my-knees promises and the offer of several properties, my dear father-in-law was satisfied, but he still couldn't help but give me the evil eye. I couldn't blame him. If anyone tried to steal my daughter, I'd be way worse. Chloe still chose to marry me while she was in grad school. She could see how worried I was. One night, when I was tossing and turning, unable to sleep, she cupped my face in her hands and said softly, "I love you, my love." Damn it, who could resist that? We had to get married. We had to. On our wedding day, the guest list was pretty much the same as last time. Because of my drunk of a father, none of my relatives wanted anything to do with us. I didn't even have their phone numbers. So the guests were mostly our old classmates and my father-in-law's family. Our old classmates were all shocked. No one could believe that Chloe had ended up with a slacker like me. But even so, everyone was very happy for us. When Chloe and I were going around toasting the guests, I saw Mr. Davis secretly wiping his eyes. I was about to go over and tease him about it, but then I saw him chugging a glass of water. When he saw me, he gasped, "Next time you make me a hot dog, can you go easy on the spice?" The corner of my mouth twitched, and I nodded helplessly. I turned and saw Chloe's best friend, her cheeks puffed out with food, giving me a playful wink. I thought for a moment, then rubbed Chloe's back and whispered, "What genre does your friend write?" "Mysteries." "Oh, that explains it." I put my arm around Chloe and went over to toast her friend with a full glass of wine. Even though we were careful, Chloe still ended up getting pregnant. At the exact same time as in the last life. I was puzzling over it when I caught a triumphant look in Chloe's eyes. "Well, so much for my careful planning. It's always the one closest to you." Just like last time, Chloe insisted on having the baby. My wonderful in-laws also took turns trying to convince me. Man, I was the father, but somehow I was being made out to be the villain. I had no choice. But luckily, I'd been preparing for this ever since we got married. I'd already moved the factory to be near her university. Everything was already in place. I basically became a stay-at-home husband, spending all my time researching recipes and bringing Chloe meals on a strict schedule. I overheard someone in her department once and found out they'd nicknamed me Husband of the Year. Wow, what a title. It would have been even better if it came with a trophy. I was terrified that if I let my guard down for a second, Chloe would get postpartum depression again, just like last time. I went over to my in-laws' house and basically threw a tantrum until they, embarrassed by my behavior, finally agreed to come live with us. I even secretly borrowed their phones and searched for postpartum depression a few times. Sure enough, the algorithm is a powerful thing. Later that day, videos about it started popping up in their feeds. With the whole family on high alert, Chloe was happy and smiling every day. Genuinely happy. I got the number of that same therapist from the last life and secretly sent her updates on Chloe every day via iMessage. Luckily, the doctor said everything sounded good. And after Chloe gave birth, none of the same problems from last time appeared. It was wonderful. My love was okay. When Chloe woke up in the recovery room, the first thing she did when she saw me was burst out laughing. It scared me so much I had to keep reminding her to be careful of her stitches. I'm the one who just had a baby, so why are your eyes all red and swollen from crying? Chloe gently stroked my swollen eyes. The moment she spoke, I felt the tears welling up again. In this life, that same scandal about hot dog ingredients blew up again, but luckily, I had the experience from last time. I made our entire supply chain and production process completely transparent. Because our ingredients were so clean, our sales actually boomed. Oh, and the old bastard. This time, I was by Chloe's side 24/7 after she gave birth. She and our daughter were happy every single day. I never gave him a chance to get anywhere near her. Most importantly, I'd had a rare moment of foresight back then. After he cut me, I'd gone and gotten an official medical report. The old bastard tried to show his face once. The moment he did, I shoved that medical report in it. I threatened to call the cops, and he got so scared he never came back. I stopped by the florist and bought a bouquet of sunflowers and a small cactus for my daughter. I didn't expect to see Chloe standing right outside the shop, holding our little girl and waving at me. "Look, it's Daddy. Daddy bought us flowers." I smiled, took our daughter from Chloe's arms, and held the sunflowers in front of her. Let's go home. I'll make you guys dinner. I was holding Chloe as we slept, and I vaguely felt her give me a kiss. What was that? I nuzzled my head against hers, half asleep. I vaguely heard her whisper in my ear, I'm sorry about the last life. It must have been so hard for you, running between the factory and home all the time. The last life? What about it? I yawned, still half asleep, and snuggled closer to her, feeling something wet on my cheek. It wasn't hard. You were just sick. Chloe's eyes stung with tears. Looking at the man sleeping soundly beside her, she couldn't resist giving his cheek a light, playful slap. This idiot. To think that at the beginning of this life, he was actually trying to stay away from her. Luckily, she had good taste and didn't let him go. Thinking about the last life, Chloe found she couldn't sleep. She quietly slipped out of bed and pulled the covers up over him. She sat on the edge of the bed and opened her phone. She looked through the photos from that day at the amusement park. In the corner of almost every single one, you could see the mascot bear. Chloe scrolled through the pictures, a smile on her face that slowly turned into tears. Her finger stopped on the last photo. It was taken from above, and in it, the mascot bear was awkwardly making a heart shape with its hands. That fool. No wonder she'd fallen for him all over again in this life. The man beside her rolled over, his hand patting the empty space next to him as he mumbled her name in his sleep. Honey, I'm here. I just went to the bathroom. Oh, well, come back soon. Hearing him talking in his sleep, Chloe smiled and wiped away a tear. As she put her phone down, her eyes caught a piece of paper sticking out of a half-open drawer. It was tucked between the pages of a book. She reached out and pulled it out without thinking. Using her phone's flashlight to see, Chloe felt all sleepiness vanish. At the top, it read, Project Moonlight. Step 1, drop out of school, stay away from Chloe. Step 2, start a business early. After Step 3, there was just a single bullet point with nothing written next to it. Clearly, the fool had run out of ideas. Well, he was never a good student, she thought with a sigh, so it's no wonder. The plan was written on a piece of a torn test paper, and his handwriting was as terrible as a doctor's scrawl. Chloe shook her head with a small smile, put the paper back where she found it, and slipped back into bed. I groggily opened my eyes a sliver, still sleepy, and snuggled closer to her. I reached out my arm and pulled my love into my embrace. From now on, my moon would always be right here in my arms.